So the I'm Alex situation just seemingly gets worse and worse the more time goes on, and judging by how bad Alice's statement was, you can imagine that his past relationships weren't that much better. And honestly, at this point, the amount of ex-girlfriends that have come out, which I believe total about 3 now, to expose Alex on his BS should confirm to any of his doubters that this guy needs to be checked out quick. So like I said before, this new third ex came out very recently with a little bit of proof, not nearly as much as Alice had, or the second ex in question, but she has detailed accounts of her experiences with Alex, and that's what we'll be going over shortly. But first, if you missed the initial statement by Alice, which pretty much put all of this out in public, I covered that video a couple of days ago, so this is my follow-up to that situation, or at least while we wait for a response. The notes start off by saying specific names won't be mentioned, but most can assume anyways. The start of my last relationship was everything I wanted at the time. I was already living my best life, so things were only improving, but the guy was super lovely and sweet to me. Always cared and went the extra mile, but something changed not long into the relationship. It was like he was keeping things away from me, which is obvious you'd tell your partner. I mean, I would have in that situation. There came a time his ex came back into the picture, and like anyone, I felt a terrible gut feeling. Primarily when they met up and she ended up going to his flat and went out clubbing with him and some mates, all of which I'd found out through social media. Nothing from him. I had already made it apparent that the two of them being together made me uncomfortable, but his response was I wasn't happy and, quote, I didn't think it was a big deal and I have to be friends with her for work. Anything I'd say was met with an excuse. No sorry, I'll tell you next time, or anything. So I just had to push how I felt aside and watch them on call every night and talk all the time. Shortly afterwards, he broke up with me as he was planning on moving elsewhere, and he said the last 6 months were the worst of his life and how nothing good had happened. I was devastated and spent countless nights crying myself to sleep because at the time I was genuinely in love. I'd do anything for him, and it hurt a lot that I couldn't make him happy. I made one tweet during this breakup that I saw a good looking guy in the gym and he flips out at me saying that I'm a liar for telling him I'd wait for him and would only like him and he doesn't ever want to be with me again. I broke down at work crying to him on the phone, trying to apologize to him and saying how genuine I was when I said I'd happily wait for him. All I did was make a tweet about someone being attractive. Eventually he agreed and let me come see him and we started back up again, and he said he was sorry for being angry because he just missed. He never moved in the end, so I'm glad I had to experience those awful nights wondering why I wasn't good enough anymore for no reason. One night he went out and left his laptop with me. I looked through some messages and he was a lot closer to his ex than he let on. He would tell her his problems, but to me he didn't want to, quote, drag me down or get me involved. He'd also message a girl complimenting her ass, but me talking about a guy in the gym was the end of the world. I never mentioned this to him because I knew it would just cause an argument. I could never win with him. As time went on, anything that bothered me I'd tell him, and I'd just be met with a load of messages that started with I'm too busy, I don't have time for this, I'm not happy, I've got other things to worry about. The list goes on. He would always get angry at me sharing my feelings. Looking at him, he's not a scary person, but behind the scenes, he scared me when he was angry. At this point, I knew my feelings were pretty much invalid and I couldn't go to him about anything. I still did though. Whenever he upset me, I'd tell him, and of course it was met with the same response. Countless times he'd reverse the situation and play the victim, to which I'd stop being upset and feel sympathy for him. I was always there for him with advice and help, but he was never there for me. One time he told me that he was feeling really down, so I drove 3 hours in the middle of the night to see him, yet when I told him I got down, I was met with something like, I'm working. For my 22nd birthday, I spent a majority of that day alone watching TV as he was in bed all day, but I can't really be upset about that because his excuse was, quote, being depressed. I picked out flowers as a present for him and he bought me some Jaffa cakes, which later I got told that they were meant for the both of us. I'm not one to compare gifts as I love to give, but I took this guy to a 5-star hotel for his 21st birthday and he couldn't even organize something nice for us to do on mine. There's situations where he had been pure evil, telling me that he hates my friends during an argument about how I felt uncomfortable being sat next to a male Uber driver who was touching himself and at times kept staring at me and my friends. We were simply saying that they wouldn't let us sit in the front, period. He sat in the back just so he could talk to his friends and I just became invisible. He blamed me for not telling him sooner. However, if he had paid attention to me as a person, he would know I have social anxiety and find confrontation, especially that kind of confrontation, really difficult to deal with. He told me he hates fat people when he went on to jokingly call me fat when he knew I wasn't happy about my weight. I feel lucky that my depression doesn't get in the way of making others happy, but no matter how bad I get, I can always make sure others are okay. Now I know everyone might not have that same mindset, but he struggled with his own mental health issues. He broke up with me on Valentine's Day this year after I sent him a text saying that it doesn't really feel like he appreciates/loves me anymore, in which he blames me for breaking up with him, which I didn't. He gave me excuses as to why he couldn't do this anymore. Again, quote, I'm too busy, or quote, I'm working, etc. I even booked time off just to spend with him, told him the dates, and we never bothered to arrange to see each other again. Of course, he was too busy for me, but he told me he wasn't gonna go out for drinks with his friends. However, that just translates to going out to Asada. So he had a go at me, saying that I don't allow him to just go shopping with his mate. What triggered the message was him saying that he was going out for drinks after saying that he had no time for me. The fact that I had to see his own friends with their girlfriends and seeing them make time for the other hurt like hell. His excuse for what they were doing was because they weren't as passionate about their jobs as he was, so they were wasting their time. He never came to me because that took away too many days where he could have been working instead. This made me feel like I didn't deserve his time or was even worth his time. Going on from that day, I was obviously upset over it, but I was able to manage it pretty easily at first. I tried to talk to him about it, and he'd rarely respond. It wasn't until COVID hit that my own mental health crumbled more, and I had to watch people die every day in April. This was when I really needed him to be around, not that he ever was anyways. It got to the point where I sat in my car on the verge of offing myself when I needed to speak to someone. I called him, and in the end he turned off his phone and didn't answer because he couldn't be bothered to talk with me for a few days, even as I was having a breakdown. I still struggle to understand why he broke up with me, as the only thing he changed in his life was getting rid of me. He didn't get rid of anyone else. Apparently, getting rid of me was supposed to make his life better, yet his friends were the ones who got under his skin, and they're still around to this day. Eventually, he blocked my number. I would see him on social media talking to everyone and anyone, calling random girls he's never talked to before, and when I pointed out that he could talk to me, he kicked off saying that's basically me trying to tell him he can't have friends. All I wanted to know was why I wasn't allowed the same time of day that his friends were. He'd be more happy talking to another girl about her mental state than mine. Anything I would bring up after the breakup, I was yet again met with, I'm depressed, I'm busy, I can do what I want, I don't need this. And for someone who would constantly remind me of their depression and use it against me, he never once took my mental state into consideration. I could have gone to a certain person about this situation, but he threatened me, saying that if I went to said person, I'd have no chance of ever being with him again. Well, now I don't care either way, and I never want to be with you anymore. I don't see why people can't know now. The only leverage he had over me is now gone. This guy made me feel completely worthless, self-conscious, and gave me such a lack of trust in people that it's taken me back how much my current partner is understanding and willing to help overcome my depression. He's literally having to deal with the damage my ex caused. There's so much that I can go on for page after page, but these are the main points. No doubt, if he catches wind of this, I'll get accused of lying, or he'll just shout at me like he used to. However, I told him that he was mentally abusive, and he said, quote, don't go throwing that around. I'd like to have full closure on our relationship, but I know that he would never admit it. I have a lot of friends who have seen texts and heard voice notes, and don't worry, they don't like you either, and they will back this. And of course, here are the small text messages that she provided. This is just like a bit of the evidence, and the rest of them were just notes. But of course, as you can see here, it says, yo, where's Jess? For fuck's sakes, I'm very angry at the bar. I'm going to kick her head in. Now I'm locked out. Might kill her, might actually kill her. And then of course you have that audio call. Now it seems pretty apparent to me that if you look at Alice's recollection of events and kind of look at these new ones, there seems to be a lot of similarities, especially with how Alex likes to play the victim when he's clearly in the wrong. Now I'm not gonna lie, it is hard to kind of read this stuff and not feel bad for the person in question, but once again, this is just one side of the story, and I'm not saying that Alex is innocent by any means. And honestly, if you're the one that's saying that, you're either trying to protect yourself for legal reasons because you're speaking out publicly against it, or you just haven't read any of the accounts from the 3 exes. But that's pretty much all we got for now until we wait for Alex's response, whether that be on Twitter or on YouTube. Of course, I'll be covering that situation and it will be a follow-up to this video, so if you're subscribed, be on the lookout for that. If you haven't subscribed already, it would help out the channel a lot. We're almost at 4,000 subscribers and I'd really like to hit that goal. So once again, if you want to support the channel, that's the best way you can do it. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Sub up, stay safe, and peace.